massive, massive welcome to Jeremy Corbyn.
Much of Britain's left is in a celebratory mood. The despair of defeat at this year's general election has given way to the hope of victory in the Labour leadership race. Many on the left believe a saviour has risen.
It does take back into public ownership crucial monopolies like railways, Royal Mail and so many others.
Some of his fans have even compared him to Jesus Christ on account of the fact that this JC has performed his own miraculous resurrection.
I think people have had enough of the politics of celebrity, the politics of personality, the politics of abuse.
If you believe the hype, Jeremy Corbyn, the most rebellious MP in the Commons, is getting ready to become the next leader of the Labour Party. What exactly is going on?
Staying together, campaigning together, working together, marching together may not achieve everything we want, but it's the only alternative we've got. Thank you very much for coming tonight. Thank you for your support.
I'm Mobeen Azhar, and this week on The Report, I'm meeting the supporters who've put their lives on hold to back Jeremy Corbyn's campaign. To some, they're Corbynites, fighting the good fight. To their detractors, they're Corbyn's morons, a naive bunch of left-wingers who, if you believe Tony Blair, would lead Labour to electoral annihilation. According to some, they're secret infiltrators. But who are they really? The last poll of Labour Party members suggested that Jeremy Corbyn has the support of over 50% of party members. Many of Corbyn's critics have put his surprise success down to entryism, the idea that Britain's far left are flooding the Labour Party in some kind of organised coup. But if you come to a rally like this and follow the Corbyn campaign trail, you can soon work out that entryism doesn't explain Corbyn's popularity. Far-left parties in Britain probably have a combined membership of under 12,000. Even if every single member of a far-left party in Britain had joined Labour to back Corbyn, it still wouldn't explain how he's become the leadership front-runner. So who are all these people?
I'd not really heard of Jeremy Corbyn, and this is about, I don't know, 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, when everyone was like, Jeremy Corbyn's going to be here. And I'd sort of heard about him in the news a bit, but didn't know much about him, hadn't looked into like his history or stuff. And everyone was like, he's great. And he's running for Labour leader. I was like, yeah, but he is in the Labour Party. Like, he can't be that good.
At just 21, Isaac has lived in Bristol for 4 years. He moved here from Penarth in Wales to study English literature. And right now he's funding his graduate job hunt through ad hoc work at a vegan cafe. He's friendly and bright-eyed, explaining he always believed hard work will lead to a good job. Till now, that belief hasn't delivered. It's this sense of a broken deal that inspired Isaac to go to a Corbyn rally just a few weeks ago.
He turned up bang on the exact moment he's meant to arrive, as he does seem to like to do. And suddenly everyone in the room was like really excited. I was like, well, what's going on? And then you heard him talk, and just hearing him talk, I don't know what it is, but he just has his power to just really capture you. And he's very, but not in a sort of when you're like, you see some people talking, they're very good, and you're just like, I don't like you. You're very good at talking, but I don't. He's just very likeable, instantly very likeable. And then and what he was saying seemed like really rang a bell with me. And then you look into his history, and a lot of the things that had against the Labour Party were being like, you know, pro-austerity. The Iraq War is a big, big issue for me personally. And he voted against that.
And I can see by your body language and your expressions and everything, you're really excited.
Yeah.
Isaac is so enthusiastic, he recently organised his own Corbyn rally in Bristol. His new obsession is all he wants to talk about, and it came up last week when he went for a job in recruitment.
Well, that was one of the reasons I didn't get the job. They got me to talk about Jeremy Corbyn and went, we think you're interested in Jeremy Corbyn and not in recruitment.
But it came up at an interview.
Well, they went, what's the best thing you've done? I was like, I did this meeting. And then they went, tell us about it. I was like, blah, 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 blah. It was amazing, people everywhere. And they went, you don't seem excited about recruitment. I was like, oh, well, obviously I am, you know. But yeah, I'm not very good at hiding it. Yeah, it's just that he gives people real hope. Like no other like Natalie Bennett's great, and you hear her talk and you go, well, that's good. Yeah, I agree with her. But you don't come out going, we're going to change the world. Like this could happen.
Isaac, can you tell me about the process of joining up?
You can go online. You go on I think it's the Labour Party website, or you can text the word Labour to 78555. And I think that one's really easy. That literally you just text that, and then they ring you up and go, where do you live? What's your name? And stuff like that. And yeah, when they call you up and like, oh, so why are you joining? I was like, joined to vote Jeremy Corbyn, and you could tell straight away that the guy who was talking to you had heard that 1,000 times already.
I can relate to Isaac. I've never been a Labour Party member, but as a student over a decade ago, I chaired my local Stop the War coalition and even spoke on the same platform as Corbyn against the invasion of Iraq. My activism morphed into the Respect Party project, hailed at the time as a unity coalition. I remember thinking, in the way that many young people do, that we were on the brink of revolutionary change. I was wrong. So could Isaac's enthusiasm have more tangible results? Well, this leadership contest is distinct from anything that's come before. Anyone on the electoral register could pay £3 and become a Labour supporter, and then vote for their choice of leader. Harriet Harman MP championed this initiative as a way to let the public in, and more than 120,000 people have signed up. But unfortunately for Harriet Harman, not many of them appear to be inspired by New Labour's middle-of-the-road policies.
I grew up with a framed speech of Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" thing. You know, my mum always brought me up to, believe that all humans are humans and to be kind, and I just always had this intrinsic sense of fighting for those that can't defend themselves.
Lindsay is one of these new supporters. I meet her at her warehouse space in East London. There's a lot of cracked plaster and a concrete floor. A makeshift swing wrapped in plastic flowers hangs from the centre of the room. She tells me this place used to be a porn set and asks me not to mention its location. It's not meant to be residential, and she says she could be evicted at any time. Should we just can I grab a seat?
Yeah, of course.
Wicked. How's it been? Have you been frantically organising?
So I tried another couple of people yesterday.
Lindsay left St Helens near Liverpool as a teenager. Now 30, she does a portfolio of part-time jobs to keep her head above water. Her support for Corbyn is genuinely grassroots. In the run-up to the leadership contest, she's put her life on hold to make a DIY Corbyn campaign clip. Today is filming day.
Hello. Sorry, I'm making a short film about the housing crisis. I was wondering if you'd be happy to answer one or two questions on camera.
Housing's bollocks.
Lindsay begins her experiment in political filmmaking in Tower Hamlets. This is still her side of town, in an area that has the highest child poverty rates in the UK, with 78% of households reliant on out-of-work benefits. The plan is to get local opinions on housing.
I'm looking for locals to speak to. Would you be happy to answer a couple of questions for me?
After some teething problems with the camera Lindsay borrowed from a friend, she gets chatting to a woman who says there's a shortage of council flats in the area.
I've got a daughter who's wants to move back here. And they told her she's got no chance of moving back here unless she's lived in the area for 5 years. And she's got 2 girls.
Yeah, I'm trying to address this problem with by just making a short film.
Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, and I really can, because they've got no affordable housing for anybody these days.
Yeah, there's a massive housing shortage.
There is an housing shortage. My thing is, don't build silly shops, but build nice homes on them for people that's got children.
Yeah.
I watch Lindsay talking to people as they go about buying groceries from the local market. There's certainly an appetite to talk about housing problems, but I want to know if Lindsay has a practical take on how the housing crisis can be remedied. I'm from a very working class family. My dad was a bus driver. I'm from Huddersfield. I moved down to London. You're from St Helens. Yeah. You moved down to London. Now, a couple of generations ago, it would have been the more standard thing to do for working class kids to stay in their area. So what I'm getting at is really, are we part of the problem? Because the guy you just spoke to, he mentioned that he's been here, his family has been here for a few generations, but his family can no longer afford to live in this area. Now, there is an argument that that's because lots of people from outside this area, like you and I, are coming here.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that side of the argument, but I think migration happens. For me, focusing on creative industries, I don't think I would have stood half a chance if I'd stayed in St Helens, though I never would have stayed there anyway. But I think I was plotting my escape from being 3 years old, saying I was going to move to London. So I think the important thing is to have a greater spread of wealth across the country, like enough housing that everyone's okay, support and priorities for locals, and making sure that, you know, no one's below the breadline.
Just like Isaac in Bristol, Lindsay voted Green at the last election, and both are now registered as Labour supporters. To them, ideas are more important than any sense of party affiliation. Whilst these bright young things are angry about tuition fees, the jobs market and housing, they both have had a degree of social mobility, moving away from their hometowns and getting a university education. So what about the workers?
Well, my dad was a miner. He grew up a Labour supporter, a trade unionist in the miners' union, and kind of passed on a basic understanding of politics to me and my younger brother. You know, we learned enough to despise the Tories, you know.
At 45, taxi driver Gary still lives in Sunderland, the city in which he was born and raised. He's old enough to have loved and then left Labour, the party that his family traditionally backed. I meet him at the 2-bedroom house he shares with his wife, 3 sons and dog Betsy.
When I was younger, I voted for the Labour Party, yeah, I mean...
And when did that change?
The bombing of Iraq and subsequent invasion, really. And it was a Labour government at that time, which I found hard to take, you know, as someone that had voted Labour in the past, was now having to confront this Labour government that was doing something that was abhorrent to me. Do you know what I mean? Bombing a country and killing innocent people. I couldn't get my head around that.
Was that a Labour government that you'd voted for?
Well, yeah. In '97, I think a lot of people voted for Tony Blair, thinking, you know, to get the Tories out and for a better future. And sadly, it wasn't to be, you know. So when they were doing things like that, I mean, not just the bombing countries, but privatising public services and other things, and not repealing the anti-union laws, which was a big thing, you know. As a son of a miner who'd always been a trade unionist, I couldn't understand why they wouldn't do that, get rid of Thatcher's anti-union laws, you know. So things like that were betrayals, and I found myself on the other side of Labour.
The Labour Party was hemorrhaging members during Blair's second term as PM. Like Gary, many core supporters were angered by the war in Iraq and backed away from mainstream party politics to become part of single-issue campaigns and fringe parties like Respect. In fact, Gary has stood in elections as a candidate for both Respect and the trade union and socialist coalition. But after a decade on the fringes, Gary has returned to the Labour fold.
A lot can change in a very short time in politics, you know, and everything's changed. I mean, you know, with Jeremy standing as the left-wing candidate, I can't oppose that at all. I've got to support that because I want to see the Labour Party brought back to its working class roots, you know, with left-wing policies and fighting for socialism.
There are those within the Labour Party at the moment that are saying that they're worried about the party being hijacked. They're worried about Trotskyists and entryism. They're worried about people who are affiliated with parties that are way left of Labour, paying their £3 and trying to vote in the leadership contest and basically swing it to represent their agenda. Are you one of those people?
No, I would argue that it was hijacked by them. Labour is traditionally a working class party. It was started by the trade unions originally. It should represent working class people. But I think the party was hijacked by those people who are now accusing people like myself of hijacking it, you know. It's been too close to big business, corporations for a long time, you know, pandering to the rich and betraying working class people. So we're not hijacking it. If anything, Jeremy Corbyn is managing to bring it back to its roots, which is where it should be. And if anyone's standing in the way of that, they're not for Labour. You know, they're the traitors. They're betraying the working class.
So has Gary got it right? Is this leadership contest really about reclaiming a party that has abandoned the working classes? Could that explain why Corbyn has gained more traction than anyone expected? Back at the warehouse in East London, I asked Lindsay if her family, who still live in St Helens, share her take on the state of modern Britain.
A hell of a lot of people in this country, they've worked hard all their lives and they can't understand why they're struggling.
She recalls a conversation last Christmas in which a family member announced they planned to vote for UKIP.
I think fear and not knowing what the future holds drives people to need answers, and then when these answers are being, put out there in the form of the Daily Mail and the Sun and the Telegraph, things like Katie Hopkins, people referring to immigrants as vermin and making it out like we're being invaded, like this is some giant castle and there's like people coming to steal our riches, that and that's why austerity exists. That's what these people think, that they're scared and they've worked hard and they were promised that it would pay off, and it isn't paying off. And now they're turning around and being told who to blame, and obviously it's not the people at the top of the food chain. And I feel so strongly about that. It's just the inequality infuriates me.
I can see you're quite upset about the conversation with family. Where was that whole thing left?
I don't know, I left early. I didn't spend the rest of Christmas with my family. I went and stayed with friends, and we can't really speak about it.
The fact is, many traditional Labour voters were drawn to UKIP at the last election, and away from a party they perceived as being unwilling to tackle thorny issues like immigration. That was one of the issues which topped voters' lists of concerns in the last general election. Yet amongst Corbyn supporters, I've noticed more concern about the way immigration is presented by the mass media than with the actual subject itself. Which begs the question, is the Labour Party that the likes of Lindsay want the one that the electorate wants? Luke Akehurst thinks not.
I think the Labour Party in the last general election, our base was too narrow. We only managed to get to 31%. We've got to grow that somehow. To really be sure of winning in a general election, you have to get to 40%.
Luke is a long-standing Labour Party member and also secretary of Labour First, a pressure group that has actively campaigned against Jeremy Corbyn. He says a win for Corbyn will spell failure at the next election.
So we have to kind of broaden our coalition of support, and perhaps some of that broadening does need to be to the left to pull in people that previously identified with the Greens or were turned off from politics entirely. But that won't get us near to 40. We've got to somehow build a coalition that also includes people that voted UKIP or Tory last time, and that's going to be really difficult.
Both the pro and anti-Corbyn campaigners claim that they're motivated by true Labour values. I've brought Luke and Lindsay together to share their perspectives. A few minutes into the discussion, Luke is finding it difficult to win over Lindsay to what he says is a more pragmatic approach.
If we don't meet the electorate halfway, then all we are is a pressure group saying these things and caring about them, but not actually having any political power to tackle them. So I think everyone in the Labour Party shares the same values, whether that's Liz Kendall or Jeremy Corbyn or Cooper or Burnham. If we had been able to attract enough voters and stop them, I want to stop people voting Conservative. I want people
that your primary aim? Is the Labour Party being in power?
Yes, because without power you cannot do anything. If we're not in power, then it doesn't matter how wonderful the policies are that we're espousing.
The thing that strikes me with you personally, and I've read your blogs, and it seems to me that, you refer a lot as your focus as being power, and it refers a lot about the focus being the Labour Party. And you said you campaigned for Ken Livingstone when he stood for mayor, despite the fact that you fundamentally disagreed with several of his fundamental policies. Now, that mentality is something that I cannot comprehend. For me,
but that's part of being a collectivist. If you're a socialist,
to me, it's a football team mentality. That's like saying I don't care who in the world, if it's who in the world wins, plays in my team as long as Manchester United win. That's what I'm about. I'm about the badge. I'm about Labour. I'm about Labour, no matter what that becomes.
Well, on one level, yes, I'm completely tribal, and I'm completely proud of that.
That's dangerous mentality.
That I'm Labour because at the end of the day, it comes down to Labour or Conservative. So I will always be Labour.
Luke, you're suggesting that the Labour Party does need to pretty much at all costs appeal to voters because they need to get into power.
That we lost the election because we didn't win seats off the Conservatives. In fact, we lost
because
some
you were
seats
Tory light, because you're not offering an alternative.
I think yeah, that just isn't the case. It's not Tory light if Labour had a £50 billion more spending plan than the Conservatives. It's not Tory light if we were going to abolish the bedroom tax. It's not Tory light if we would have carried on with things like tax credits that the Tories are now abolishing. That's two completely different visions of society. We've lost touch with... I was canvassing, I spoke to thousands of voters, and it wasn't just like asking them who they voted for. It was proper conversations with them in seats we needed to win and didn't, like Dover, like Reading, like Southampton, like Milton Keynes. No one that I spoke to said they wanted Labour to be more left-wing and radical. And that's a tough message, but you got to come to terms with it. The country you live in isn't the one that you dream of living in. It's the one that we've got. My only question for you is, if the ideas that Jeremy Corbyn puts forward are so brilliant and so attractive to so many people, the Labour Party was such sellouts and so boring, and the Greens were so brilliant and idealistic, how come the Greens got like 2 or 3% of the vote and Labour got 31%?
Because people have the same view, the archaic view that you do, that it's a two-party race. People are afraid. Most of the people I know that voted Labour did so out of fear. They didn't do so because they agreed with anything Ed Miliband said. I haven't met one person, and I know dozens of people that voted, and that's just the people that I asked. People do it out of fear. I refuse to engage with this politics of fear. It's got to return to a politics of principles, of voting for what you want.
Just one more thing. Do you think, by meeting Lindsay, do you feel you've learnt anything? And what do you think she represents in terms of the Labour leadership?
Well, I hope that she represents someone that's going to switch from being just a registered supporter to being a full member and put all the energy that she's got into being involved in the Labour Party.
That may be wishful thinking. Lindsay, and in fact Isaac in Bristol and Gary in Sunderland too, told me they have no intention of campaigning for the Labour Party if Jeremy Corbyn is not selected as leader. This approach could signal a shift in the way politics works in modern Britain.
We still have a bit of a mindset, all right? I always think that sometimes the people in the Westminster Village have a mindset that this is basically a two-party system, was in the 50s, was in the 60s, and somehow we're going to get back to that. But it's not.
Paul Whiteley is a professor of government at the University of Essex. He's been collating data on the opinions of the electorate since 2013. He believes the trends that his research has revealed have been widely ignored by mainstream parties.
We asked the question, is corporate greed a major problem in Britain? 44% strongly agree that it is. Another 38% agree. So you've got more than 80% of people thinking corporate greed is a major problem in Britain. So there's a background of discontent with the status quo in Britain that's not really been given much attention given the result of the general election in May.
And would you argue that the Corbyn campaign has capitalised on that then?
Precisely.
I've spoken to Labour Party members this week who've suggested that the Labour Party lost the last election because they were too far left, and that Jeremy Corbyn, if he's successful, will make the party unelectable. Does your data suggest that they're wrong?
Well, I think the conceptual argument here is basically wrong. The assumption they're making is that parties have to be close together in the centre ground. You know, you hear the phrase, capture the middle ground, capture the centre ground. That's not what drives elections. Most people don't understand this idea of the left and the right. It's a very common argument in the Westminster Village, but they don't actually get it. They don't know what it means. But they do know whether a party delivered or not. For the Conservatives, they delivered on economic recovery in 2015, and that's what won them the election. It wasn't left or right, because, as I say, for many people, it doesn't mean anything. So I think the basic narrative about what drives elections has been wrong-headed. And this argument about, well, they're slipping to the left doesn't really matter if those policies can be successful. Now, you may argue, well, a shift to the far left will be a failure. And certainly historical evidence could support that in 1983 with Labour. But basically, voters are not asking themselves, where is Jeremy Corbyn on the left-right dimension? They're asking themselves, is this guy saying something which is new, which might help me and deal with the problems that Britain faces? That's the really interesting question. And if the status quo for Labour was good, then you could argue they have to play it safe and do rather similar things as they have in the past. But the status quo is not good for Labour. It's lost its support in Scotland. It's lost a lot of working class support to other parties in England in the election, and it needs to come up with a new narrative. And the thing about Jeremy Corbyn, whether you agree or disagree, is that he has a new narrative. And I think that's what's exciting people.
Yesterday marked the registration deadline to vote in the leadership contest. For the next few weeks, Lindsay, Isaac and Gary will be focusing their efforts on convincing those who've already registered to join the Corbyn camp. Gary is campaigning in his own way.
Are you recording now?
Yeah, you could go for it. He's become a minor celebrity on YouTube with his ode to Jeremy. He tells me the leadership contest has already made an impact, regardless of who actually wins.
Here comes the man with the plan. Can he change a thing? Well, yes, he bloody can. I think that we can win, 'cause we've got Jeremy Corbyn.
For Isaac in Bristol, and Lindsay too, the leadership campaign has marked a transition from issue to party politics. Lindsay finished her campaign video and is now focusing on spreading the Corbyn message before the ballot closes on September 10th. If the polls are right, Jeremy Corbyn will comfortably become the next leader of the Labour Party, something that seemed unthinkable just a few weeks ago. The Labour establishment believed naively that by letting the public in, they'd rally the kind of supporters who shared their Blairite New Labour vision. Instead, they opened the floodgates to the thousands of voters who resented them. Overwhelmed by the deluge, the heirs to Blair could now be swept away.
'Cause we've got Jeremy